Hello, sorry, I got a bit distracted there by the Game Boy. Welcome to Playing Games. Playing Games? With Scrum. Hello, welcome, good morning, good evening. Bad luck, cameraman. I'm so sorry, people watching this on video. You're going to have an absolutely terrible experience because I'm going to wander around the stage so much. But hopefully you can hear what I'm saying, okay? Now, I'll be speaking in an English accent. I think that makes me sound slightly more intellectual, don't you, I think? I am from the West Country of England, a place called Bristol, or as we like to call it, Brizzle, where we sound like farmers. So if you've ever seen Captain Jack in Pirates of the Caribbean, that type of accent, Blackbeard. So at some point, if I get excited, what may actually happen is I start sounding like a farmer. Ooh-ar, batteries, tractors. If I do start sounding like a farmer, I would like you all to please ignore that and pretend I'm still semi-legible. Is that okay with everyone? Excellent. So by the way, if you've never been to Britain before, there's something in Britain called pantomime. Pantomime. I've lost my control already, hilariously. Put it down somewhere. It's over there. Pantomime. Have you ever heard of pantomime in the UK? Who's heard of pantomime? Show of hands if you've heard of pantomime. What pantomime is basically really bad plays put on in Britain for kids and adults. But there's lots of call and response in pantomime. So I noticed this morning Henrik asked a question to put your hands up, and oh boy, did people not like putting their hands up. They were like, I don't want to look a fool. Well, the entire point of pantomime is looking a fool, so we're going to practice now. I'm going to say hello, and you're going to say hello. Hello! Hello! What's the number after 8? 9. I've got nothing on Sundays. Brilliant, excellent. So at various points I'll ask you to shout things out, and you can if you wish. If you don't wish to, that's absolutely fine. It's very boring if the room's silent for me. So let's get going. Playing Games with Scrum, Nigel Baker, that's me. Hello! That is the thing that took the longest in the entire presentation. Right, that picture there of digitizing myself and making myself into a Game Boy game. I want you all to appreciate it. Later on, it's going to come back, okay? I'm going to put it in now like it's a joke, and it's going to come back later as a serious point. Pay attention. So my name's Nigel Baker. I was a childhood programmer. I literally grew up with computers. My father had a computer before he had me, back in the mid-'70s when computers were chunky. I've been in IT for nearly 30 years now, but doing Agile for 20 years. That's quite a long time for something that's supposed to be new, by the way. I've been a software developer. Who's a software developer in the room? Show of hands, software developer? Yes, the best job in the world. You will not believe me until you try the alternatives. And then you will go, oh man, I wish I was a developer again. I wish I was a developer again. My only warning is it's not like riding a bicycle. I can no longer code anymore, and I'm very sad about that. I lost the ability. Don't lose the ability. That's not the point of the talk. Just a little bit of advice. I've been an Agile coach for 17 years. Notice I'm reading off my own slide. 15 years a certified Scrum trainer, keynoting conferences, yada, yada, yada. I've always called myself an unfunny comedy orc because I've got a little bit of an orcish tendency. You know, orcs from Lord of the Rings? Like arms are slightly too long, head's a bit too big. Look at the size of this head. He had to adjust the mic to make it fit my unnaturally large head, right? And then, Klaus, did you draw the picture? So they did a picture. Did you see it in the corridor, the Fellowship of the Ring, of all us Agile speakers? And I said, oh, I'll be an orc, please, joking. And they made me an actual orc. Now, I look pretty gruesome, but you should see the first prototype of that picture. It was legitimately just awful. I don't mind. I have no shame. So, welcome to this presentation. Context is king, but context is a con. So what am I here to talk about? I'm here to talk about the fact that many developers hate Scrum. In fact, I'm going to talk about most developers seem to hate Scrum. And that's rather annoying for me because I was a developer for years and I like Scrum. And there's a bit of a disconnect there. I think, well, I really like this stuff. Why is everyone hating it? And I thought perhaps it's me. There's something maybe I've stepped away from coding too long. Maybe I've not appreciated how things have moved on in the world. Maybe I don't have the real life experience that I used to have. And I decided, no, that's not true. You're all incorrect. And I am, in fact, right. That's what I decided. We'll see if I'm correct or if that's complete nonsense by the end of the presentation. But joking aside, the point of this presentation is contextualism, which is a fancy word. What I mean by contextualism is a lot of people say, oh, we're doing Scrum, but. Or not even that. Like, do you remember this morning, Henrik gave a great presentation about like Minecraft. And someone said, this is all great, Henrik, but how do I make this work in my corporation? And I'm assuming the unsaid thing was, it's like a big insurance company. We've used SAP. It's 100 years old. No one's ever tested it. Blah, 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 blah. My boss hates me, sort of stuff. Yeah, which is probably true. And so here's the thing, right? That type of context is, well, it's true, but it's not helpful, is it? It's like, you're not supposed to really be bending or malforming Scrum to fit that type of bad environment. But there was an entire conversation about how actually the Agile movement keeps moving. It's not fixed in stone. The first line of the Agile manifesto is, we are uncovering better ways of developing software. I noticed, I saw the other day a photograph of the original Agile manifesto meeting, like a private snapshot, and it actually had the first version of that line. This is true, it's not a joke. The first version was, we are figuring out better ways of developing. And they changed it to, we are uncovering. But it's, we are uncovering, not we have uncovered. So it's a journey. And so there is a point to all this, like, hey, moving on, understanding perhaps methods of the past need to fall away and we need new methods to carry this on. So the entire point of this really, playing games with Scrum. Now, playing an actual game down there was a joke. When I said playing games with Scrum, have you ever heard that term before? Playing games with. Playing games. You may have heard it in a Backstreet Boys song, I think it was. Quit playing games with my heart, with my heart, with my heart. You should have known I should have known from the start. My heart, my heart. Quit playing games with my heart, or something like that anyway, very highbrow music. But playing games, if you haven't heard this song or ever heard this, playing games is an English term. I don't know if you have it in Danish. Do you have this term in Danish? Playing games with someone's heart or playing games with? Show of hands if you have this term in your language in some way. A few of you. What language is your languages? Danish are fantastic. Any other languages have this terminology in their language? Playing games with. Well, I'll give you the direct translation out of the dictionary. Playing games with means deal with something or someone in a way that lacks due seriousness or respect. So like, you're playing games, you're not taking it seriously. Playing games with someone's heart could be to be evasive or deceptive, to mess around with someone or someone's feelings, not being direct or telling the truth. So that's the idea of playing games. You're playing games with someone. You're manipulating, maybe accidentally, maybe not taking it seriously, or maybe deliberately. But a lot of you, when you heard the word playing games, you probably thought this. We're going to be playing games. So we've got a game. What's a game? A game is an activity or sport, usually involving skill, knowledge, or chance, in which you follow fixed rules and try to win against an opponent or solve a puzzle. And of course, playing is being cooperative, engaging in activity for enjoyment, recreation, etc. So actually playing games, there's two different ways of looking at it. Now actually, what's interesting is this way of looking at, you could say Scrum, Agile, an activity or sport involving skill, knowledge, and chance, in which you follow fixed rules to try and win against an opponent, the customer. No, a cooperative game to solve a puzzle. I didn't actually invent this metaphor. This metaphor has actually sat in the Agile industry for a long time. Alistair Coburn, this is the earliest slide I can find from Alistair with it in, from 2003, but I'm pretty sure it's earlier than that. Did you know Alistair Coburn? One of the authors of the Agile Manifesto, one of the 17 authors, there's quite a lot of them, but I would regard him as one of the key figures, like the catalyst for their famous summit meeting where they came together and came up with a lot of their principles and values, their manifesto. And for me, kind of one of the, I hate the term thought leader. You ever heard that in work? Oh, he's a thought leader. And they never are they? It's always just some wally on LinkedIn decides he's a thought leader. You know what, I'm a catalyst. Or like a catalytic converter on a car. Maybe. But he actually generally is a thought leader. And he said about this, about different ways of looking at games, different types of games or different types of scenarios, looking at them from like a finite or, with fixed end, no fixed end, and whether they're combative or cooperative. And for him, software development, for me actually, software development is very much a finite, goal-driven, there is an end game, cooperative sport, cooperative game. And so we've got these two ways of looking at it. We've got this way of looking at it from like a manipulation way, from a non-serious way, and a way of looking at playing games from an actual, genuine, fixed rules cooperating together. So I thought, you know what? Let's do a presentation on that. Let's take these two different ideas and mash them together and see where they come out. Now, but what metaphor can we use? What analogy can we use here? So I thought I could use computer games, but Henrik's done that. You know, I can't compete with Minecraft, can I really? Be a bit difficult, wouldn't it? Oh, yeah, I work with games companies. Yeah, the games they make they're okay. Sometimes they make money. It doesn't work so well. So I've gone a bit old school. Welcome to the world of board games. Who here has played Monopoly? Show of hands if you played Monopoly. Now, Monopoly, I will give you a little true story about Monopoly. We own Monopoly in my house. I have a wife. I have two daughters, 10 and 7. The 7-year-old is actually going to be 8 this Friday. So could you all wish happy birthday to Alice, please?
Happy birthday, Alice.
That's for you, Alice. For everyone else, true story. We played Monopoly together as a family, and we stopped playing Monopoly. We played one game of Monopoly. We got 6 days into Monopoly, and we had to quit it. I think that's a damning indictment of the capitalist system, really, isn't it? You know. And interestingly, if you know anything about Monopoly, you'll know that it was originally invented as a game called the Landlord's Game, which was a damning indictment of the capitalist system. So hilariously got turned into a commercial artifact, but actually it's supposed to be a game critiquing, money, basically. Now, why have I put Monopoly on the screen beyond to revenge an ancient grudge with this game? Boom. What happens in Monopoly when you land on free parking? Tell me now. Shout out. Shout out. What happens? Depends on the rule set. Because what options are there here, sir? Yeah. So a lot of people play a rule which is all the fines, all the go to jails, they go into a pot in the middle of the board. And if you land on free parking, you get all that cash. Ding, ding, ding. Except if you look in the rules of Monopoly, it's not there. It's a made-up rule. It's made up. It's urban legend. It doesn't actually exist. Monopoly does not tell you to do that. You land on free parking, you do nothing. However, a lot of people play that rule. It's a house rule, a bit of fun, you know. But my concern is, a lot of people play it because they think that's the rules of Monopoly. And actually, if you've played Monopoly for 6 days like I have, you will discover that that rule has unintended consequences. It's a small change, but it actually knocks the game of Monopoly off its kilter. You know, you're working hard, you're buying up the right mortgages, you've got your children well placed to suffer under the remit of your rents, and suddenly they land on free parking and get loads of free cash. I digress. The point is a small rule change can have a knock-on effect. You ever heard of the butterfly effect? Where supposedly butterfly wings its wings somewhere and there's a hurricane somewhere else? That does happen in games. You tweak small rules and you can get unintended consequences. What happens when you land on a property in Monopoly that no one owns, but you choose not to buy it? It goes to auction. It goes to auction to all the other people. Everyone can have a chance to buy it. A lot of people don't play that rule in Monopoly. And that's actually an official rule in Monopoly that allows Monopoly not to go on for 6 bloody days. So you can see an issue for us here already. When you have any game or method, tweaking of the rules, that can be fun. But mistaking perhaps a tweak for actual rules, dropping rules, adding rules, can lead to consequences that you had not originally anticipated. Here is the greatest board game ever made by mankind. I'm sure you've all heard of this. Who's played Baker Cake before? I have, because look who invented it. Yes, when I was 8 years old, myself, Nigel Baker, and Scott Wilson, hi Scott, I told you I'll get into a presentation. Scott Wilson and I designed this board game called Baker Cake, right? Now, we were 8 and 9 at the time, and the idea of this game was you travel around the board, buying up ingredients from shops. You then go to your house, bake a cake, and then you head to the center where the cake show is, and the first person to get their cake to the cake show wins. Now, I do not want any commentary on how that is not how cake shows work. You know, it's not first come wins. Hey, I've got a fairy cake. Congratulations, sir, you've won. That's not how they work. But we built this game. It was a fun game, completely invented by us. No one else involved. We completely created this on our own. You can see here, feel sick, go straight to home. That was my idea, by the way. Very classy, notice the little bits of, they're very lovely. Does this look similar to anything? Anything you've ever seen before look like this? Yeah, it's basically a rip-off of Monopoly, isn't it? We've completely homaged, or as I think it was it Picasso? I think it was Picasso who said it. Good artists homage, great artists steal. Yeah, we basically just ripped off Monopoly massively to make this game. But you can't blame us. We were 8, and probably 9, but definitely 8. And so this happens a lot in the world of agile methods, where people say, oh, we're going to make our own. You know, we don't believe in following pre-written frameworks. The world of frameworks is dead. You need to create your own framework, create your own ideas. Where context is so complex, how could you follow anyone else's ideas? And what they do is they do a complete pastiche of something Scrum-like, it's normally Scrum. I was going to say something else, but it's normally a Scrum rip-off with some new names, some new conventions, but maybe just not quite as good. Now, the reason Scott and I created this game is quite interesting. Because actually, Scott's got an older brother called Paul. Hi, Paul. Paul is 5 years... in fact, our neighbour Chris, we're all neighbours. Chris is also 5 years older. Paul and Chris were 5 years older than us, and they used to make board games. Now, bear in mind, I'm 8, that makes them 13. They are the coolest human beings who ever existed when you're 8. Because they're grown up, they're like teenagers, they invented their own games, and they were very good, actually. I think Chris came up with a lot of the rules, Paul was a great artist, and they used to build these games, and we would play them, all 4 of us would play them. And I will be honest with you, they're the greatest experiences of my life, is playing those games. I still remember to this day, we had great fun playing those home-written, homemade board games, right? I know it sounds a bit underprivileged. We did actually buy games from shops. We weren't living on the street or anything, but the homemade games were really fun. I remember one game in particular. It was called Cockney Werewolf in Washington. Right? Again, you may have noticed the subtle joke there about so Cockney Werewolf in Washington involved 4 private eyes. You're trying to find a werewolf. But, shock horror, one of the werewolves is a private eye. No, wait, one of the private eyes is a werewolf. That's the way around it worked. So one of you is a werewolf and the others don't know. And so the job of the werewolf is to... Now, you may have heard of a game called Werewolf that sounds very similar. We had never heard of this game at the time. Because the job of the werewolf was actually to kill people in this little house, this little town they built. Little town of houses. Job of the werewolf is to go around the houses and kill people. But not let out who they are. Because obviously they're in disguise. And the job of the private eyes is to work out who the werewolf was. And they did a wonderful job. I can't remember too much about it. But I remember all the houses they made with a little card. Just the roofs. But you turned it over, you'd see a little picture inside of what's going on in the house. And then if you pulled a little slide, it would reveal what the werewolf's done. I remember what the werewolf did involved a lot of red felt tip. So someone's head's ripped off or something. And bear in mind, we're 8, so this is the greatest thing we've ever seen. Oh my God, the head's been... So it's fantastic, it's great fun. And I can remember to this day, we started playing this game, and within the first move, we realized a massive, catastrophic problem. Why would a private eye go in any house if they're not a werewolf? This is why you can't buy Cockney Werewolf in Washington for $19.99 on Amazon. Because the game had fundamental design flaws in it we instantly discovered when we started playing. Bear in mind, they were 13, we're 8, you can't blame us. Welcome to the problem with rolling your own agile methods. Creating your own frameworks and processes and projects and methods to do this stuff. The problem is, are you a professional game designer? It sounds so silly, but there are professional game designers who think about these things. With that game, everyone put a lot of effort, a lot of time, and unfortunately it had catastrophic flaws in it that we did not discover until we played it for the first time. And this is an issue when we start getting into the world of agile with a small a. Of, I don't believe in following methods and frameworks and approaches from other people. We're going to create our own. Great, but the risk is you could be creating things that are not necessarily fit for purpose. But you do want games with strategy. You want games with a bit of thinking in. What the trouble that a lot of people have with frameworks is what they actually mean is methodologies. They mean and methodologies can suck a bit, where you follow like a recipe to achieve a certain result. That's great if you're making a cake. Bake a cake, follow the recipe, get the results. Unfortunately, that's not great in our world, as you all know, the complex world of software, or complicated world of software development, where there's very few universal algorithms we can follow to get great results. So we're not trying to create games like Snakes and Ladders, where it is mere chance if you win or not. What we want to have is games and methods that are a bit like Catan and Catan or Catan? How do you pronounce it? I own this game, but I've never played it, embarrassingly. I was given it by, stop filming, I was given it by an in-law, and I haven't opened it yet. I was given it a couple of years ago. But hopefully play it soon. But it's good as it. Well, I play Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride, me and my family, we play that. We have a great time playing Ticket to Ride. There's so much you can do with the game. So much in the game that you can discover, good ideas you can have, tactics you can come up with, strategies you can invent in that game. It makes the game really, really rich. It means you never play the same game twice, which is really rather powerful. And that's kind of what we're aiming at with our methods, isn't it? Having methods that support different each time, whilst allowing us to have a bit of structure to get that joy, that fun, that value each time. Just remember, rules don't have to be complex for the game to be complex. Chess. The classic Scrum example of chess. Easy to learn, hard to master. I'm just posing for a photo, 1 second. There we go. Easy to learn, hard to master. The idea of chess. You ever heard that example? Because you can learn chess in the morning, doesn't make you good at chess in the morning, right? Well, it's the same actually thing true with a pack of cards. My friend Paul Goddard, very famous Scrum trainer, he uses a pack of cards as an example. I actually put a pack of cards down here. Oh, here it is, in my pocket here. I bought a pack of cards at the airport to demonstrate this. Pack of cards from the airport. It's 52 cards, they're all different, very simple. Yet, you can get amazing games out of a pack of cards. I love playing poker. Who's played poker here? Tonight. No. I love a game. I'll play poker anyway. I love poker. It's a great game. Really fun, entertaining game with a few simple rules. Okay? And so I've heard it said that with a pack of cards, if you shuffle them, there's never been that shuffle order ever in the history of mankind. And there will never be that shuffle order again, probably till the heat death of the end of the universe. It's like trillions and trillions and trillions. I've got the number written down somewhere. I can tell you how many different shuffles there could be of 52 cards. It's, here we go, 8 times 10 to the power 67. That's a lot of different ways of playing cards, isn't it? You know what I mean? Lots of different ways. So you want your games, you want your rules simple, probably. Having simple rules doesn't mean you can't have a complex game. Though, interestingly, these cards I bought at the airport. Can you have a look at these cards, please, sir? Have a look at these cards. Have a look at these cards. Have a look at, I've got coffee. I went 30. It's not nice. There we go. Have a look at these cards. Take some cards. Take some cards. Take some. Good. Hand them down the line. Don't keep them to yourself. That's greedy. They're not actually gold. I just want to demonstrate that these cards are indeed. Have some more. Put them down the line. Throw them down the line. I've got some left. Here we go. Down the line, please, sir. So if you look at these cards, what do you see about these cards that is unusual in these playing cards? Anything you could tell about these cards that's unusual? Yeah, they're gold. It's not a trick question. Like, it was like, do you all play with gold cards normally? Why the dictionary definition of gold-plated? Why would you put this extra feature in? Never have I played a game of cards and thought, gosh, well, do you know what I really need in this situation? Gold ones. It's just ridiculous. And so sometimes people overcomplicate unnecessarily. There we go. What else is there? Oh yeah, and of course some people have who plays Magic the Gathering? Anyone play Magic? Anyone play Pokemon? I'm afraid to say, look how out of breath I am just from walking up the stairs. I am too old to have played Magic and Pokemon, I'm afraid to say. They came along after I reached adulthood, so I didn't have that sort of joy of some of you had discovering them. But they are quite complex games, aren't they? They are simple, but each card has got its own rules, and those rules combine in weird and wonderful ways. So what's happened with Magic and Pokemon over the years with these cards? More and more complex? And what's the unintended consequences of that? Yes. I bet you, who's played actual Magic here? I've never played Magic, but I've watched someone playing once in Dublin in a game shop, and they both had their decks, and one guy started playing, and the other guy was instantly like, oh, Jesus Christ. Because this guy was basically playing these weird and wonderful combinations with some very loose interpretations of how they combine. And the other guy said a magic word. He says, dude, that card's been nerfed. Have you heard the term nerfing? It comes from the sponge guns, when you weaken something or make it less because the previous version was a bit spiky and a bit too powerful. And so forever they're having to patch things like Pokemon and Magic to say, look, no, those two cards don't go together. You can't really summon that with that in that situation. And this is the unintended consequences of complex methods. Complex matching with complexity leads to lots of unexpected situations. And like Henrik had, what was it, 6,000 bugs or something? Unexpected combinations of complexity lead to defects. That's bad enough in your product. You don't want that in your process. Because all of a sudden you've got Cartesian complexity and you're in a whole heap of stuff. So, video time. Turn the sound up. Video time. Ready? The spontaneous videos. Video man, ready to go? You ready to go, video man? Yes? Go. It's worth it, probably. Is it? I haven't tested it. Oh, it's not working. Oh, you can do it. Ah, not working, never mind. Neat! I'll do the sound effects for you. Oh, give me a break. What's happening? I'll do the sound effects for you. Oh, what's happening? Ah! Ah! Where are we? Why are we dressed like this? What's this unicorn? Look out! It's a massive dragon with 5 heads! Fear not! Ranger? Barbarian? Magician? Thief? She's never called a thief at any other point. Cavalier? And acrobat. Oh, we're getting away now. Look how awesome this is. Let's quick climb away. Look. Climb. Oh, getting away. Thank God for this. Ah! Venger, also known as Peter Cullen. Who was that? That was Venger, the force of evil. I am Dungeon Master, your guide in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. I think it was better with my subtitles, don't you? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There we go. Don't we love it? Don't we love it? There we go. Oh no, don't play again, for God's sake. Stop it. Right, here we go. So Dungeons, okay, right. Now we're getting into really interesting, deep games now. Who plays Dungeons and Dragons, or who has played Dungeons and Dragons, right? Or who's played a role-playing game that's not Dungeons and Dragons? Immersive, cooperative, collaborative play. We're starting to get closer and closer to the world of software development now. A cooperative game, deep, it's open-ended, can go a lot of different places. Has anyone here played any of the Games Workshop games? Warhammer 40,000, Warhammer Fantasy Battle, Age of Sigmar, which I believe is the new one. No, yeah, exactly. Old Hammer, come on, forever. Now, so I haven't played these games in a while, but I read about it all the time because that's what I do these days. Those who can do, those who can't, read. So Fantasy Battle, my game from my teenage years, is a competitive game. Right? It's a game, 2 armies against each other in a rich universe that Games Workshop destroyed. I'm not going to say it on camera for the reasons why. I'm not saying that. Very litigious. But Warhammer Fantasy Battle was a game I used to play all the time from the age of about 11 to the age of about 18. I love Fantasy Battle. My friends and I used to play. But I didn't play it with the right spirit of the game. Because I like winning. I like winning a lot. As a child, I really liked winning. And so what I would do is spend a lot of time being very clever, doing all the stuff we spoke about a moment ago, looking at the rules, being a bit of a rule smith, looking for gotchas, ways of playing to surprise my friends. And I never cheated, never, but I just understood the rules fully and maximized the value from them. And thus, I never lost, ever, for 7 years, right? Undefeated at Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And in year 7, it was deeply, deeply, deeply unenjoyable. Because what's the point of playing? Winning? How much pleasure do you get from winning? Because I didn't, and so I stopped playing, and that's why I stopped playing. Why I won't play again? Because I it was getting harder and harder to find clever ways of winning, to come up with clever tactics, clever solutions. When actually one of my friends always lost, and he had a great time. He played in the spirit of the game. So again, a deep cut reference for those of you who have played Games Workshop. There used to be a guy involved in Games Workshop called Jervis Johnson. He was one of their lead game designers. And he used to have these battle reports every month in their monthly magazine called White Dwarf. And he lost every month, basically. For years, he lost every single time. And I always thought, how rubbish is Jervis? Like, he loses every single time. He designs the blooming games. You would think the man who designed a stupid game could win his own game. But because he played with the spirit of the game. He built armies that were appropriate to the storyline. He built armies that were appropriate. You know, so like with the elves, but the Bretonnian knights, they would have the big horse charges and everything. He played in the spirit of the game. And thus he created great experiences, had a great time. I just tried to win at all costs, had a miserable time. There is a huge conversation about playing with the spirit of the game. Cricket, English sport, British sport, sorry. Rugby, definitely a British sport. These are games that don't work very well if you don't play with the right ethos, the right spirit, the right culture. And so there's an element for us in our collaborative, cooperative play, when play in terms of cooperation together, we have to have the right culture. We have to play it tonally correctly. Else you end up with rulesmiths, with gotchas, and needing umpires to say, no, that's not allowed. You need to roll 3 dice rather than 5 dice. Dungeon Masters. Do you know where Dungeon Masters from Dungeons and Dragons? What does the Dungeon Master do in Dungeons and Dragons? Act out the world. What else? Sorry? Tell a story. They create an environment. They live and breathe the spirit of that world. Their job is not to be some rule lord to zap you with certain rules. That is a terrible game. Their job is to build a great environment to allow the role play to emerge. Their job is to help you find challenges, maybe set challenges, but nothing unsurmountable to allow you to develop up in this world. Do you remember, I think Malty was saying earlier on, wasn't he, about leaders creating environments? That's what a Dungeon Master does, creates an environment for people to have the right experience, to have the right environment. Now, officially, there's no link between Dungeon Master and the term Scrum Master, officially. But, unofficially, do you want the secret truth? Well, the secret truth is actually, there's no link between Dungeon Master and Scrum Master, the job title. But what if there was? What if there was? What if there was? Wouldn't that be awesome? Because that's what it's about. It's not about mastering people. It's not about mastery in terms of ownership of status or responsibility. It's mastery of creating the world, creating the space, creating the scrum. It's why I always get annoyed when Scrum Masters just look after events, or as some of you here call them, ceremonies. Who here calls them ceremonies? Ceremonies in Scrum. Stop! Thank you. But they're not. When was the last time you went to an exciting ceremony? Ooh, wait, wonderful, a bar mitzvah. You know, it's like, think of the weddings you've been to, the wedding ceremonies you've been to. Think of the one wedding ceremony. Who here's married? Show of hands, you're married. That was probably the only wedding ceremony you ever enjoyed. Right? Like yours. So mine was really wonderful. Mine was so quick. For everyone in the audience, they were falling asleep. So boring. These are events, you know. And that's the thing. Scrum Master's not supposed to be some rule master, some rule smith. That's just one aspect of being a dungeon master. The key aspects, creating the spirit, the culture, the environment, the tone, creating a safe, a brave space. It's very hard to role play if you've ever done it before. I bet you've had friends who've tried it, and it's very hard for them to pretend to be an elf. They go, ooh, difficult.
So what you're saying is priests are horrible dungeon masters.
Some priests are great. So my local vicar is a family friend. He was brilliant at setting I don't want to get sucked into religion on camera, but he was great at creating an environment of the culture of his religion, which was different to someone who just does the artificial ceremonies but lacks the spirit. You know, we'll talk about that offline if you want. But I think there's a huge conversation around big A Agile versus little A Agile. You know, big like methods and frameworks versus culture. I think you could apply that thinking to many things in life. rule breaking. Cheating. Now, I said I like poker. I do love poker. It's a great game. But I play poker semi-regularly in a place, and people mark the cards with their fingernails. And someone said, oh, no, it's just where they've been bending the cards up. No, it's not. I know that's not, because I know which they mark them. So you have to get a new deck so their marks don't give them an advantage. Cheating and breaking the system. At the start, we spoke around playing games. Like playing games, not treating it seriously. That was Scrum for the first 20 years. People doing it half-baked. So some of you will be Scrum Masters and also developers and also a tester. You also make the coffee, look after the cat. And it's all sort of a bit half-hearted, like playing at Scrum. These days, I see a lot of malevolence with Agile, where people with knowledge and ability bend it for nefarious purposes to get the results they want. And in that world, would I like Scrum? No, I would hate it. Who wants to play in a game where the game is rigged? As Johnny Rotten said famously in the last ever concert of the full, not original, semi-original lineup of the Sex Pistols in America as they were playing off the stage, ever got the feeling you're being cheated? And too many of you are being cheated because this stuff is just being abused, not used. So playtesting. Henrik's entire presentation was basically playtesting. Get it out in people's hands, get them looking at it, get real feedback from real people. Great idea, isn't it, with products? You don't want to just make it all up on your own and throw it at the audience and hope, do you? But people do that, exactly that, with their processes. They talk about product development being iterative and incremental and emergent and evolutionary, yet seem to forget their processes are too. So just remember that. When you next buy a fancy new Agile book by an Agile person, and they talk about their new Agile idea on LinkedIn as an Agile thought leader, great. What play testing has that undergone? Oh, lots of people you've never met have play tested it. It's great. I remember in school, a friend of mine said he had a girlfriend in Scotland, which is quite far from where we live in Bristol. You've never met her. She lives in Scotland. But I've definitely got a girlfriend in Scotland. Her nickname then became Myth. Because we didn't totally 100% believe him. And then he had another one. We called her Myth 2. And then he married that one. So it turns out they are real. But the point is the plural of anecdote is not necessarily data. Just because someone tells you something doesn't make it true. The reason I like Scrum, I'm not a cultist, I'm not a fanatic. I like it because it's been play tested hard. Hard over 25 years. It changes, it's evolved, and it's going to keep evolving. Be very careful with your own methods and processes because they've not had anywhere near as much play testing as some of the other stuff has. So what can we do to handle this? That was all very miserable with jokes interweaving it to make it less miserable. But do we have any answers towards this? Let's see if I've got enough time to answer it. I've got 12 minutes. Wish me luck. But basically, first things first, what people often get wrong is the difference between different and wrong. Now, you know, Henrik, I loved Henrik's presentation this morning where he had quoted famous old people. You had to have a famous old people quote, didn't you? You know, like the old white men quote on screen. Well, this is a quote by a very talented old white man. And that person is me. Yes, I am quoting me on my own slides. Can you imagine anything as self-indulgent as that? Like putting yourself on a slide. Hey, here's my opinion. But it's in big letters with colors, so it must be important. But it's so true. It's exactly what people do. They confuse different and wrong, right? And so let's go here. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So these conversations we've been having in the world of game design, we were having in Scrum a long time ago. Back about, 13 years ago, in our certified Scrum trainer community, we were discussing a variety of Agile things. I looked it up. It was project managers, release planning, project managers again. And I realized in this conversation at this time, there was confusion. Because people were confusing what is Scrum with what it isn't. Confusing what is Scrum with what is, you saw the Henrik's presentation with the guide? That Scrum guide had just come out. And said, well, is that Scrum then? Well, when it was first published, no. It had things in it that weren't Scrum as well. And then we've got certified Scrum Master training. Anyone here a certified Scrum Master and certified Scrum Master training? Who's not done certified Scrum Master training? We offer it online at very competitive rates in your time zone. Just come see me. That was a joke, but also true. See, I got a sales pitch in there by pretending it was a joke. But the point was Ken Schraber was supposed to come up with this big deep hub of loads of patterns, of loads of ideas of Scrum. And he turned up after months with 12 pages. And we were like, okay, that's good. Not quite as much as we expected. And we were trying to develop this exam. So there was a big issue back then about what actually is Scrum, what's in that document, what should be in the Scrum Master training, and what should be in the blooming exam. And people were getting confused. So at the time, I made a joke, because I do that. I think the term you youngsters use is I was trolling. I think that's the term that you use. But like most trolling endeavors, I failed and came up with a good idea. So what I came up with, ladies and gentlemen, was the world-famous Nigel scale. Now, this should be the first hint that it was a troll, because who names a method after themselves, right? I did it because I was joking about something called the Nokia scale that existed a few years before. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Nokia scale. It was trendy 15 years ago, invented by Nokia Networks. It was like basically a spreadsheet to evaluate your own agility. It was popular, and then it wasn't. Because you are 7 points agile. Kind of missed the point of agility. So my joke was kind of a riff on that. But I'm going to show you the Nigel scale. The Nigel scale is good. It makes the entire last 40 minutes worthwhile. The Nigel scale has 3 levels. Level 1 is Nigel scale 1. Thank you. Pay attention. This is core stuff. I used to joke Scrum Guide-tastic, but it's maybe a little bit different than that. But it's the fundamental, irreducible core of what we do in software and product development. The things that you shouldn't bend because everything breaks. So I'll take an example from real life. Imagine you are a surgeon doing surgery in a hospital. And so you're about to do surgery, and the surgeon says to you, I don't disinfect my hands. I don't need to disinfect my hands. I don't know if you know this, but bacteria and viruses are actually a complete hoax invented by Big Pharma. So they don't exist, so I don't need to wash my hands. Shut up. Shut up and wash your hands. Actually, I don't know if you know this, but bacteria is actually good for you. There's loads of bacteria in your body aiding your digestive transit. So what I actually do before my operations is I dip my hands in cow manure to get loads of good bacteria under my fingernails so I can introduce it to your body as I'm removing your spleen. Shut up. Shut up. You can have your own opinions. You can't have your own facts. There are certain things, you're not special, little flower. Don't do that. do this, you'll be okay. But unfortunately, that's very small in our world. Most of our world is Nigel Scale 2, which is stuff that Scrum doesn't officially care about. The grey area of good practice. Good for me, good for you, maybe good for you. Maybe. Just because it works for me, just because it works for you, doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. And that's where, if you look here, you've got to use your previous experience to coach organizations to self-organize their own answers to their own complex problems. That's the small A of Agile, the adaptability. And then there's Nigel Scale. Can anyone guess the third one? What's the third one? Nigel Scale. Thank you. You've always done this before. Stuff you avoid, anti-Agile. And that's a big blooming sea of bad ideas. Hey, let's do personal velocity. Let's track individual performance and see who the weak links are. No, don't do that. Don't even go near that. You will smash and burn your entire team. Anti-patterns, and again, never say never, because in the world of work, there could be stuff that actually for your organization works, but for no one else does. But there's a big pile of bodies out back of people who thought they were a special little flower, and they weren't, so be afraid, be very afraid. So this is the Nigel scale, 1, 2, 3, a simple model to look at your approaches and try and work out where we need discipline and rigor, where we need open-mindedness and flexibility, and where we need to be ruthless and cut out that cyst, and we shouldn't confuse the 3. Okay, pop quiz, hot shot, modern movie reference. See how modern this movie reference? Anyone know the movie? Speed, yeah, from the 1990s. Well, I'm old. Okay, shout out Agile things, and we'll judge them harshly as a room, whether they're 1, 2, 3. So someone shout an Agile thing, and then everyone's got to shout 1, 2, or 3 in response. Go. Sprint. Core, good or bad? Shout now. Already it's getting interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So what I think, so just why I put Scrum Guide-tastic in quotes, because I think people are discovering this, there is a deeper lore behind some of the Scrum framework ideas. So sprint as a term, I don't care, but I think the idea of cadence, the idea of fixed period of time, time boxing, the idea of focus over a period of time. Like, we used to call them, I think, weeks. Do you remember that? But that idea, that pattern is quite powerful. The name behind it, not so. Give me some more. Quick. We've got 2 minutes left. Team size. What was that? Pair programming. Core, good or bad? Probably the definition of good, isn't it? Probably the definition of a good practice, but not universally applicable. And so, just the joke is, a lot of Scrum is not Scrum. My concern is, a lot of you are hating Scrum for things that aren't Scrum's fault. You're like, damn it, man, our product owner keeps manipulating our velocity. Velocity is even part of Scrum. And that sounds like a get out of jail course, but it's kind of saying something optional is being abused, change it. Daily stand-ups. What's optional about a daily stand-up? Standing bloody up. I'm knackered. I'm an old man. I can't stand up that long anymore. And so I remember, that's not even new. I had the first Scrum book from years ago. There's a chapter in it about the job of the Scrum Master is making sure there's enough chairs in the room for the daily Scrum. And so, but the idea of a stand-up is the perfect example of a good pattern. Standing up keeps it short and sharp. It's a nice little good pattern. The minute it becomes law, the minute it becomes ritual, it becomes, for me, abuse. You must stand up. But I've got a sore hip. Bad luck. It becomes, and that's why I think you can be very dangerous with these ideas. And so, let's go through these last ones. So what we've talked about is homeopathic agility, treating fundamentals as nice to have. We've talked about cultism, treating optional things as laws. Any of you in a big company, this is rife, where people go, that one team did it that way, we are cloning that way across teams. Copy and paste agility. We've now finished learning, now conform, which is completely ridiculous. You're all different teams and all different experiences. Zealotry, the idea of thinking that Scrum or something is enough. Of course it's not enough. Like, you could do, Rubik's Cube's got patterns. There's patterns that you can use within Scrum. There's a website called scrumplop, I think, .org. It's got a range of patterns of people use inside Scrum. Have a look at it. Loads of tactics you could use to make your Scrums better. And that's the dangerous one. People treating core ideas as bad ideas or treating bad ideas as optional. Hey, I love self-organizing. Self-organizing is a great idea. So what we've decided to do in our organization is have a self-organizing management team. And so the managers can choose who and what they manage and how they manage. That's a joke, by the way. I once played Louis Cypher on stage. Does anyone know who Louis Cypher is? Yeah, he's the devil himself. I gave a presentation playing the devil. I got halfway through before people realized I was playing the devil. So for the first half, the advice I was giving was evil, but plausible. It was only when the slide started bleeding, that they started realizing, maybe this is not quite, but that's a damning indictment of people, isn't it? Your Scrum Masters, basically, how they could fall for that trick. Watch out. If you believe in nothing, you believe in anything. So to conclude this entire thing, just read the rules of the game. I don't mind if the game's Scrum, Kanban, Extreme Programming, DSM, whatever, but read the rules and understand the rules of the game you're playing and play it properly. Now, the worst bit of advice anyone ever gives, like I'm diabetic, right? And I'm also fat. And I get 2 terrible bits of advice from the doctors. The doctors say to me, your blood sugar should be lower. Make your blood sugar lower. And I say, great, how? Lower. Or like, bit fat. They say, you're a bit fat, Nigel. Okay, what do you do? Eat less. Great, how? Well, eat less. Put less calories in your mouth. Well, that's easy to say, isn't it? And so when I say properly, I'm not sort of saying, oh, we're not doing it properly. I just mean play it with the right spirit. You're in a cooperative, collaborative game. Is it supposed to be fun? It's not supposed to be hell, right? It's work. It's not, indentured servitude. There should be some element of joy in there somehow. And the job of a good team is to have that. That's why maybe, who's your Dungeon Master? Far too many teams out there are still playing Dungeons and Dragons without a Dungeon Master, and it's hard. I've just found a magical sword. It allows me to kill everything instantly. No, you haven't. Yes, I have. No, you haven't. Understand the difference between rules and tactics, incredibly important. And also, making your own game is hard, really hard. Just be aware of that. So play test, play test, play test. Look at the Minecraft thing you saw this morning. Do that on your processes, not just on your products. Experiment, safe to fail, and learn. And finally, never confuse complex with better. You're not going to need it. Simplest thing that could possibly work, maximize the amount of work not done. You may build complex products. That's not an excuse for complex processes, complex hierarchies, complex organizations. You just make life a little bit hellish. Keep it simple, Scrum people. And there we go. We reached the end